Ahoy everybody and welcome to Geek Raider, a channel dedicated to pointy tits and mean old gits. In today's video we're going to be completing the impossible task, and no, I don't mean trying to take a dump while doing a handstand. In fact, I mean that we're going to be having a go at ranking every mainline Tomb Raider game from best to worst, because let's face it, who doesn't love a good Tomb Raider wank? To make sure my judgments aren't clouded by nostalgia, I've spent the past 3 months playing through all of the mainline games, including the gold expansions, because, well, Lara is love. Lara is life. And I also just want to throw it out there that this ranking is purely just for funskies, so please don't spank me with the hand of Rathmore if you disagree with my list. And with that image fresh in your mind, it's time to pull up your panties, because here's my ranking of every Tomb Raider game. Starting off this list, we have a game with more problems than a math book, because at number 15 we have Tomb Raider 2013. Now, listen, before all you reboot trolls come out from under your bridges to attack me in the comments, I am not saying it's a terrible game. In fact, I've actually played it time and time again. But, and it's a very juicy but, Tomb Raider 2013 is just not Tomb Raider to me. Slap another title on the front cover, give the character a different name, and this would be as awesome as a 3-nippled alien. But in my opinion, the whole essence of raiding tombs here is just lost. A bit like when you take a poo only to look down in the toilet and discover that your meaty loaf is nowhere to be seen. It's just disappointing. With Tomb Raider 2013, there's much less of a focus on puzzle solving, and instead, the emphasis appears to be on combat and excessive screaming. Which is fine, but in this instance it feels like I'm listening to a porno rather than playing an actual Tomb Raider game. I mean, she literally sounds like if someone was beating a cow with an ironing board. What I will say though is that despite its many flaws, the whole concept of being stranded on a cursed Japanese island filled with dangerous inhabitants is bloody awesome. The environments are also beautiful, and the hard work that went into them really shows here. But rather than being able to enjoy the game for what it is, I can't help but just feel like the powers that be were trying everything they could to distance themselves from the classic games here, and that just makes me as sad as a limp penis, which is why I have to put the 2013 reboot as the Tomb Raider game that I least enjoy playing. Then, at number 14, we have Tomb Raider Anniversary. I know, what a shocker. But hear me out. At the time Anniversary was first released, I would have put it up there in my top 5 at least. I mean, I used to play this game so much to the point in fact where I had actually memorised all the character dialogue and would recite the lines as the cutscenes panned out. Yes, I'm serious. But having played this game just a few months ago, I have to say it's aged a lot. And I don't mean like a fine wine either, I actually mean more like Winston's ball bag. Now, I love the gameplay, don't get me wrong, but wowza, are some of these environments bland to look at. I've seen dog poos that are more vibrant. Anniversary came out at the peak of the beige era, where muted tones and realism were at the forefront of every developer's mind, and trust me when I tell you, it really shows here. Compare Anniversary to the colours in the unreleased 10th edition, and even from the first game on the PS1, Anniversary just feels a little bit bland. It's bland. And that makes me sadder than a mosquito at a mannequin factory. But still, nevertheless, Anniversary is a great game, and is one that I do enjoy coming back to every now and then. Then at number 13, we have Thighs of the Womb Raider. Rise for me is a game that surpasses the 2013 reboot by a long shot, and one that I actually do enjoy playing every now and then. Although the puzzle solving is still a little half-assed at times, and the combat does get pretty excessive, it's not to such a frustrating level this time round. Yes, the daddy issues storyline gets me hotter than a goat's ass in a pepper patch, but the scenery in this game somewhat makes up for it. From the first level, the environment had me hooked. In fact, dared I say, Rise is quite possibly one of my favourite openings to any Tomb Raider game. It's fast-paced, dangerous, and I also really like how this game allows you to replay levels as classic Lara. It feels like less of a slap in the face to the die-hard veterans out there. Overall, Rise of the Tomb Raider is an enjoyable game, and with a little more puzzle solving and a lot less Jonah, I could definitely see it ranking higher on this list. Sorry, Jonesy boy! Next, at number 12, we have Tomb Raider Underworld. And it's important to mention at this point that I'm referring to the PS3 version of Underworld, because if we were talking about the PS2 version, well, it'd be ranked at -1000. That version literally had me abusing my controller harder than an elderly person with a touchscreen phone. Anyway, when it comes to Tomb Raider Underworld, my feelings are a little mixed. The controls can feel a little clunky at times, especially when it comes to combat, and the semi-open world environments do feel a little lackluster at times. Bit like a stepmother's kiss, you could say. But in saying that, overall, Underworld is a very good game. The graphical improvements from Anniversary are extremely apparent here, and the enhancement of Lara's acrobatic skills can make traversal feel fresh and exciting. There's also some absolutely fantastic levels from the sinking ship to Thailand to Jan Mayen Island. I mean, who doesn't love a hinking pip? We also have dual pistols here, so that's a bloody bonus! And with that all in mind, I have to say Underworld is not a bad game. In fact, it's far from it. But I do find that the inconsistencies coupled with a not so great storyline stop me from putting it higher on this list. And at number 11, and last of the reboot trilogy, we have Shadow of the Penis Raider. Shadow is by far my favourite of the reboot trilogy, and the one that I enjoyed playing the most out of the three, but let's face it, this game has more issues than a complete collection of National Geographic. Like, it looks nice at first, but the longer you play with it, you just end up sweating like a nun in a cucumber patch. The graphics are exceptional, however, and there are moments at the start of the game in particular that I really enjoy playing, like the Jaguar fight and escaping the tsunami. But once you reach the city of Pai Titi, it all just goes downhill for me. In my opinion, the Pai Titi section is so dragged out. I literally have to stop playing the game once I reach that point because I just cannot be bothered to roam around the semi-open world hub at a snail's pace. It totally kills the momentum from the previous section. I'm also not a fan of all the tribal clothes Lara wears. It just doesn't seem practical when she's climbing, and it takes away some of the realism from the game for me. I feel like I've just totally dragged this game through the mud, so I do want to emphasise again that I actually do enjoy parts of this game, believe it or not, but it's one that I don't really plan on playing anytime soon. And for number 10, I'm probably alone on this, but here we have Tomb Raider Uno. I know. As someone who was brought up on the classics, I honestly never thought I would put the OG Tomb Raider so low on this list. But hear me out, everyone. Tomb Raider 1 has and always will hold a special place in my arse. And if you'd asked me to rank it 3 months ago, I probably would have put this game a lot higher on this list. But nostalgia goggles aside, after replaying this game not so long ago, I realised that there are Tomb Raider games that I actually enjoy playing a lot more than this one. And while I acknowledge that Tomb Raider 1 was the blueprint for all future Tomb Raider games, playing it in 2022 just felt a little slow and clunky, even compared to the other classic games. A bit like a big-breasted granny riding over speed bumps in a mobility scooter. You're welcome for that image, by the way. And don't get me wrong, the story is amazing and the levels are breathtaking and still hold up to this day and age. But the gameplay has kind of aged, and for this reason, Tomb Raider 1 falls at my number 10 spot. And for number 9, we have Tomb Raider Chronicles. Now, Chronicles is a game that often seems to rank at the bottom of the series for many people, but I have to politely disagree here and say, Chronicles for me is not a bad game. In fact, quite the contrary. I actually love the idea of having Lara's friends reminisce about her and then getting to relive those memories. This style of storytelling offers great variation in both the environments but also in the gameplay, which you could argue was one of the main issues with Tomb Raider 2013. However, as with every great game, there has to be some flaws, and unfortunately for Chronicles, there are some pretty big ones. Namely, the bugs. I cannot tell you the amount of bugs I experienced, especially in the VCI section. Things like Lara suddenly turning invisible and the cyborg not following you into the gas chamber just because I happened to save at a bad spot in the level. This shit was infuriating and had me shouting so much that by the end of it my throat felt drier than a camel's bumhole during a sandstorm.
Care for a fucking?
So, although for the most part I really enjoyed it, I do have to put Chronicles at my number 9 spot. Number 8. Tomb Raider Unfinished Business. Unfinished Business, also known as Tomb Raider Gold, is an extra set of 4 levels that accompanied the later release of Tomb Raider 1 on the PC. Pardon me, it's the first game in the Tomb Raider Gold series, and man does it pack a punch. Despite the reuse of the many Tomb Raider 1 textures, each level in Unfinished Business feels new and exciting. In fact, I actually find that the level design is more reminiscent of that of Tomb Raider 2, which is always a huge plus in my opinion. I mean, just take Temple of the Twats for example. I was actually really surprised by how much I enjoyed revisiting Unfinished Business, given that I hadn't played it for so long. And in addition to that, the excellent level design here is just phenomenal. There's also some really nice level continuity, where each stage kind of feels like it naturally leads to the next. The later levels have also filled to the brim with big molten testicles, so really, what's not to like? Well, there is one thing I suppose, and that is the story. Or should I say, lack of it. Why is Lara even back there? Did she lose her car keys? Is she hunting for Bouchard? Like seriously, why is she there? But lack of story aside, Unfinished Business is a fabulous game, and for that reason it sits at my number 8 spot. Speaking of gold expansions, at number 7 we have Tomb Raider the Golden Bumcheeks, also known as Tomb Raider Golden Mask, also known as Tomb Raider 2 Gold. Golden Mask is one of those games that I enjoy playing from start to finish. The level design is fun, the locations are unique, and the atmosphere is as delicious as cherry lube on ice cream. And trust me when I tell you, I would know. I mean, just take Furnace of the Gods for example. Who doesn't love a golden shower? And all jokes aside, however, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with Golden Mask. Similar to the first Gold expansion, the story here seems to be somewhat non-existent, and the overall gameplay can at times feel a little bit repetitive, especially if you're playing this straight after Tomb Raider 2, so the game does lose some points for me in that respect. But, aside from all that, I honestly have nothing but positives for this game. It's challenging, it's exciting, and it offers a range of skid mark-inducing jump scares. And let's face it, who doesn't love a juicy skid? Just missing that number 5 spot, we have Tomb Raider Last Revelation. Last Revelation is a bit like the dad who went out for cigarettes and never came back. Not a lot of people talk about it. But I am here today to bring the attention that it rightfully deserves. Last Revelation is arguably one of the most beautiful games in the entire series. Whenever I think back to this game, the first thing that pops to mind is how gorgeous this game looks, even by today's standards. It's the Tracy Martel of video games.
Oh honey, Thanksgiving? Oh honey, thanks living!
I think what also makes Last Revelation stand out for me is the fact that the entire game is basically set in one country. You'd think that because of this, every level would look tiresome and be the same, but actually, it's quite the opposite. Each area feels somewhat unique, but at the same time it feels much more focused and consistent as a whole. That's not to say Tomb Raider 4 doesn't have its flaws, because it does, especially in terms of non-linearity and backtracking, but all in all, Last Revelation is one of my favourite Tomb Raider experiences, and one that really deserves a lot more recognition from the fanbase as one of the all-time greats. And now at the number 5 spot, we have the last of the Crystal Dynamics games to be featured on this list, and that, my dear chums, is Tomb Raider Legend. As much as I'd have loved the Angel of Darkness trilogy to continue, and shout out to Jenny Millward for making this happen, Tomb Raider Legend felt new and exciting when it first came out. And after playing it again for the first time in nearly a decade, I can honestly say the same still reigns true for me. For me, Legend feels like much less of a reboot and more like Lara at a later stage of her life, which I think is why I gravitate towards it more so than the recent reboot trilogy. Legend still feels like a Tomb Raider game. Granted, the story is a pile of prison arse and the game is super short, but the levels, the boss fights, and the gameplay for me just is so enjoyable that I don't really mind that. I mean, 1 second you're riding bikes over Japanese skyscrapers and the next you're hundreds of feet underground fighting a giant watery dildo dragon. This condensed style of gameplay had me busier than a cucumber in an all-women's prison, and if that doesn't convince you that it's a great game, I don't know what will. Moving on to number 4, we have Tomb Raider Lost Fart. ARTEFACT. Get it? Hit. Lost Artifact is pure classic Tomb Raider fun from start to finish, and that's all there is to it. The game features awesome level design throughout, unique locations, and probably the best secrets in any of the Tomb Raider games to date. Like seriously, this game doesn't hold back. In the past, Tomb Raider secrets consisted of that spooky jingle and some rare pickups, but in Lost Artifact, pretty much every secret feels memorable and unique. And even with all of this, that's not the best part about it. For me, where Lost Artifact really nails it on the head is its exploration. Unlike the previous Gold expansions, which were very combat heavy, the balance here feels perfect. I could, and have, literally spent hours exploring the environments in this game, not because I was lost, but because they're so damn beautiful. Like the perfect two-toned fart. The only downside for me with this game is that some of the pickups can be really hard, which can lead to a lot of backtracking, but that's probably more to my lack of skill than the game itself, to be quite frank. Lost Artifact is by far my favourite of the expansions, and for that reason it sits solidly at my number 4 spot. So, without further ado, at my number 3 spot we have Tomb Raider 3. Probably one of the most polarising games on this list, especially for the speedrunners out there who I'm sure will disagree with this placement. But for me, Tomb Raider 3 is just pure excellence. In addition to the diverse locations, I love this game's challenge and just sheer relentlessness, especially when it comes to navigating through all the dark, treacherous environments and unpredictable traps. Playing Tomb Raider 3 is literally like taking a poo after eating a vindaloo. It's unpredictable, it's downright dangerous, and it's sure to burn a hole in your undies. The sheer difficulty of Tomb Raider 3 makes every playthrough feel different and exciting. But, and a big fat juicy but, that is only because I know what to expect. If this was the first time in me playing Tomb Raider 3, I think the first 2 levels alone would probably be enough for me to never want to play the game again. But still, this doesn't manage to take away from the incredible atmosphere and brilliantly designed levels throughout the game. Tomb Raider 3 is a force to be reckoned with and is a game that I will gladly play again and again without hesitation. And just missing that number 1 spot, we have Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness. Yep, you heard correctly. Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness. Now, before you go biting off my balls, typing away in the comments about how the game caused you to grow a 3rd nipple, hear me out. Angel of Darkness is a game that would have benefited from a little longer in the oven. I'm not denying that, trust me, I'm not that delusional. But is it really the worst game of the series?
No.
Did it really kill the franchise?
No.
Are the controls really as bad as some people make them out to be? If I had a coconut for every time some lunatic says something like that, well, I'd have a lot of bloody coconuts. Without hesitation, I'm unafraid to say that Angel of Darkness for me is an absolute showstopper of a game, and one that I regularly play. Heck, it's probably the only video game where I've spent in excess of 24 hours reading through all the lore and character bios. Seriously, Angel of Darkness' storyline is so gripping that it has me sweating more than a glassblower's arse. And as for the levels, the music, the challenges, well, they make me go in the best way possible. And I'm sure for some of you watching you'll disagree with me on this one, but in my opinion, Angel of Darkness is one of the most underappreciated games of the series, and one that I recommend every true Tomb Raider fan to play. And that means, at the oh-so-prestigious #1 spot, and my favourite game in the entire series, we have Tomb Raider 2. It goes without saying that Tomb Raider 2 is pure perfection from start to finish. It is the sausage to my roll, the pork to my pie, the toad in my hole. That sounds wrong. Tomb Raider 2 for me is the granddaddy of them all. The levels are excellent from start to finish. The gameplay is exciting, the characters are interesting. There's literally no flaw that I could think of when playing this game, other than that by the end of it I was begging for more. Sometimes the game gets a bit of stick from fans for being too combat heavy, but I honestly don't mind it at all in this instance. In fact, it just adds another layer of challenge and causes me to have to think on my feet rather than slowly climb each room like the game's predecessor. I have nothing but good things to say about Tomb Raider 2, and this game alone is the reason that I got into the series as a child. So, for these reasons, Tomb Raider 2 ranks as my favourite game in the entire series. And just like that, this video comes to an end. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me in this video as we explore the greatest video game franchise of all time. I'd absolutely love to know if you agree or disagree with my ranking in the comments, but remember to keep it kind as I'm a sensitive little bean. Also, feel free to subscribe or, hey, don't, it's no skin off my nipples. Thanks again everyone, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Peace!